live, work, and have fun. Thank you for choosing to fly from Washington International, our hometown here. We hope you enjoy your time.
Welcome, everybody. I am Ann Crabell, the CEO of Art Bridges, and I am coming to you from the airport in Milwaukee, where I have been spending some wonderful time visiting with these, incredible partners in the Midwest, incredible collections. Anyway, you got to come to Wisconsin. There's just an amazing scene here. I wanted to introduce our three exciting projects that we're going to, kick off our webinar today with. And these projects really exemplify the spirit of collaboration and impact at the heart of Art Bridges' mission. And I also just want to say, if for whatever reason I freeze or like you hear weird things, Ashley, our incredible curator, is going to take over for me because sometimes it says my connection is unstable, but I promise you I am stable. Anyway, so first we're going to look at the Partner Loan Network with Lauren Nye from the Hunter Museum of American Art, and she's going to share how these long-term loans have brought new energy to her museum exhibitions and audience engagement strategies, not only as a borrower, but in this case, as a lender as well, getting those artworks out of storage and across the country so that she can share the incredible collections there. And then next we're going to
say, oh, it looks like Anne.
What? Sorry. Oh, I think so, we had a breakthrough voiceover there. Next, we're going to hear from Michelle Yun Mapplethorpe, the executive director at the Katonah Museum of Art, who's going to introduce the traveling exhibition Ali Banisadr, the Alchemist. It's the first major U.S. survey of the artist's work, featuring these incredibly bold, colorful paintings about memory, history, and sound. And it's been getting some incredible, reviews. So this is going to be, a hot exhibition that is going to be made available to you for the remaining slots that we have. And then we'll turn to the Art Bridges collection. Some of you may have read our recent acquisition, 81 new artworks that we acquired of modern and contemporary Native art. Our very own Ashley Holland, curator and director of Curatorial Initiatives, is going to share more about the scope of this collection and how you can bring some of these works to your institutions. Next, we will wrap up with the Q&A, so please feel free to submit your questions in the chat at any time. But before we launch into these three initiatives, I'm going to go ahead and just give you a quick overview of Art Bridges. For those of you that have seen this before, feel free to drop your names, introduce yourselves in the chat, and get to know each other. So if we can go ahead and put that first slide up. Perfect. All right. So many of you know about Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, an institution that was created by Alice Walton in her hometown of Bentonville, because she really does believe that everybody deserves access to art. And this is, much to the skepticism of East Coast and West Coast, but it's turned out to be a beloved institution. She, however, created this with very minimal storage, and she did that on purpose. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, you can see this incredible campus here, Crystal Bridges, located again in Bentonville, Arkansas, and minimal storage in this institution, lots of public space facing the galleries and spaces. But she did this because she really does not believe that art can exist without a viewer. And so this idea planted the seed for Art Bridges. Could Art Bridges be a resource to help get collections out of storage? So if we could go ahead to the next slide. You can see at its core, Art Bridges' mission is to create meaningful, to deliver access to create meaningful experiences with art for personal and community well-being. And tactically, what we do, we partner with museums to provide strategic and financial support to get American art out of storage and into communities nationwide through our innovative and collaborative programs. And this is, really a way of, we hope, democratizing access to art and really thinking of collections as a public good rather than an institutional good. If we could go to the next slide. So our impact since 2017, we have created and supported a lot of projects, over 900 projects across the country. We have over 280 partners currently of art museums of all sizes, impacting over 20 million people. And the way that we do this is through two program pillars. We have art sharing and then we have community engagement. Through these two pillars, we really believe that these can create broader access for the American public to really great works of art. You can also jump onto our website and you will see if you visited our website before, it was a little bit tricky to navigate. And we're hoping, and we'd love your feedback, that by organizing it with these two pillars, art sharing and community engagement, you can better navigate the programs that we have to offer to you. So let's get on to our Partner Loan Network feature. So today we are going to share works available through our Partner Loan Network. And this is a key, it's sort of the North Star of Art Bridges and how we foster the circulation of American art. So you can kind of think of us as like your interlibrary loan department for art museums across the country. Lenders identify works from their collection and they create groupings of 2 to 5-ish artworks that are available for a 2-year loan period. We support the lending of this through all of those costs that make it really, really difficult to exchange artwork. So we cover the insurance, we cover the object prep, the crating, the packing, the shipping. We even can provide some installation support if that's needed. Additionally, that community engagement pillar can provide up to $25,000 in programmatic support to help activate those artworks in new and innovative ways for you. So joining us is Lauren Nye, Associate Curator at the Hunter Museum of American Art. And she's got this incredible example of a full circle partnership, not only as a borrower, as I said, but as a lender. So we are really excited that Lauren is going to be talking to you from the lender side of things today and sharing with you artworks that are available for loans and how this program has impacted the Hunter Museum's work. So welcome, Lauren.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Pop over here. Looks good. So I'll give you a very brief introduction to the Hunter. We're here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We are on the bluff. So this photograph was taken from the vantage point of, above the river. We've been on the bluff along the Tennessee River for over 70 years. We have 3 distinct buildings. You'll see our sort of historic mansion here in the center, which was the beginning of the museum. We have the 1970s wing and the contemporary edition as well from 2005. And our collection dates back to the 1730s, sort of early American works. Those early works are mostly exhibited in our mansion galleries. It's a really beautiful setting for the historic work and a great place to introduce contemporary conversations as well. We also have about a 5,000 square foot temporary exhibition gallery. You can see just views of 2 different exhibits here. We host 3 changing exhibitions a year in this space. They vary wildly to appeal to our community. Right now, there's an exhibit of historic shoes in the space for the summer. And we have hosted Art Bridges traveling exhibitions in this space as well. Now, let me go back for just a second. So we have partnered and been involved with the Partner Loan Network as a borrower multiple times. We recently installed 14 pieces from the Toledo Museum of Art. We borrowed 2 different groupings at the same time. We spread those works across 6 galleries. Last year, we borrowed a grouping of Cecilia Bow works from PAFA in Philadelphia, and those 6 pieces were spread across 3 different galleries in unique groupings. They were really a great way to supplement our collection. We also have experience with learning and engagement grants that go along with loaning from the PLN network. We've been awarded funds for things like digital interactives, bilingual translation services, and community outreach programs with Title I schools in our county. And I'm really happy to talk more about the perspective as both a borrower, which is what we have more experience with, and now as a lender. So if you have questions in the Q&A, I'd be happy to talk about that. Our facility, we exhibit about 10% of our collection at any given time publicly, which is why, being a PLN lender is a great opportunity for us. So we have 6 groupings that I will sort of go through, just sort of give you a broad overview of the groupings that we are preparing to offer that have all been approved through the service, so they will be available to book. So group number 1, which is our earliest grouping, is Hudson River School works. Here at the Hunter, one of our strengths of our collection is Hudson River works. So we are able to lend these works without really losing many Hudson River pieces in our galleries. They are really consistently rotating features in our galleries. This group of really classic Hudson River landscapes span a pretty tight 5-year window, capturing the real essence of this period. They feature bucolic views of rural life, sort of free from the trappings of city and industrialization. And you don't sort of see that urban sort of sprawl in these pieces. They can be sort of a great addition to a collection that may be lacking in those classic Hudson River scenes. Group 2 is sort of that post landscaped after Hudson River School. And I will point out right away that in the upper right and lower left, both of those pieces are currently out for conservation. That has been a big benefit to our institution in partnering with Art Bridges. The Partner Loan Network is providing for conservation of these works, so they will be freshly cleaned and available for loan. We're really excited about that because while they were on our priorities for conservation, they were not high on the list of priorities. So this partnership has allowed for that as well, which is something we probably wouldn't have done right away. These pieces are kind of a nice mix of traditional 19th century depictions of the landscape and early 20th century views that sort of start to tend toward that looser brushstroke, as you can see in those later pieces. So they would be a nice counterpoint to the traditional Hudson River School, or they could supplement a collection that is strong in Hudson River, but then doesn't continue a strong tradition of landscape depictions. Our third grouping, which we've all been sort of having fun with, is sort of different approaches to portraiture. They're uniquely styled portraits. So I think this would be a grouping that could be spread into multiple galleries to address different time periods. The Milton Avery, we have a few Milton Avery pieces, and this piece has been rotated off view, so it's available to lend. These artists worked outside of specific groups or movements. Their work could be sort of anachronistic or, really iconic for their different depictions of the figure. So that's why we sort of grouped these pieces together. They were very independent artists who didn't strictly follow the rules of their time or the movement that they were associated with. Our fourth grouping sort of talks about hyperrealism and this very traditional approach to hyperrealistic painting. The Jack Beale, the Daniel Sprick have been up for a long time at the Hunter Museum, and it's time to sort of rotate them off view because they have been visitor favorites, so it's been hard to take them down, but they're big and they're very sort of arresting in person. People really love these pieces, so we're looking forward to sharing them with new audiences. The Bechdel is also quite large, and each of these artists are sort of painting and depicting and capturing spaces that they're very familiar with that are close to them. So either their studio or their direct neighborhood or the people who are nearest to them. And I think that's a real tenet of the hyper-realistic movement, where you spend so much time observing what's closest to you and depicting those spaces and places that are important to you and how we see ourselves in our environment as well. So grouping 5 is a unique group. And it is one piece that makes up the entire group because it is quite large. It is a Robert Longo. Each of these panels is each panel is a different frame, and they all get installed together as a triptych right up against each other. And this sort of larger than life scene has the German Shepherd, this like classic view on the left, and he's observing sort of a high society ball. And the piece is called Watchdog. So you have this animal observing what's happening with the people. And if you look closely, all these smaller panels inside, they are printmaking like metal panels that each depict scenes from the news. And when you look very closely at these are not always the most pleasant scenes to be depicted. So you're getting this amazing juxtaposition of once you get closer up to this piece, you're seeing some of these more challenging images within this much larger triptych. So there's many layers to the piece that visitors are always very interested in. It's a great way to bring conversation into the gallery because it is so arresting in person, it's so large, but also people are always very interested in picking out those small details and talking about, teaching about what these combinations of images mean. And then our last grouping, which I believe is called Painting Today. We see 3 works of realism from the 1980s. And then in addition to that, we have the Whitfield Lavelle, which is in the lower right corner. It's a mixed media piece. And works in this grouping, a few of them have been on view for quite a while at the Hunter. The Janet Fish painting, for example, we have a gallery where we exhibit glass sculpture, and the Janet Fish was hanging in the glass sculpture gallery for quite a while. It's sort of a beautiful counterpoint to the topic of the depiction of glass in paint, and it's a nice way to bring some points of interest to the wall in the sculpture gallery. The Whitfield piece, it is mixed media, and it does require some special considerations whenever it comes to installing because each special material and each one is different. Was displayed in our mansion gallery, and it was displayed alongside depictions of portraiture and historic images from the South, from our region, from the 19th century. So it had a great sort of contemporary conversation with depictions from the South in those historic mansion galleries. And I think it worked really well in that context because it is such a classic image made out of these found materials, but it adds this nice contemporary point to the conversation as well. So that is my last grouping. I know it's a lot of work to talk about, so hopefully I didn't breeze through it too quickly, but I am happy to take questions then later whenever we get to it.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. We do have some questions that are coming in the chat, and we'll save that for the end for all of them. So keep them coming. I am trying to kind of keep track of them as we go. So we wanted to now move on to one of our other art sharing initiatives, which is traveling exhibitions. So we really look at helping to support organizations that are doing incredible work, but they just don't have the capacity, they don't have the bandwidth to be able to travel them, which is such a shame because you put all this intellectual, all of this creative labor into these exhibitions, and you hope that they could have more impact with partners across the country. So how that works is we essentially support those costs for an originator with a flat fee, and then we take care of all of the shared costs and subsidize those for the borrower, depending on their budget size, anywhere from 20 to 70%. There is no participation fee, so this is an incredibly affordable way of bringing traveling exhibitions to you. We also help support local costs. So if there's specific installation costs or builds that you need to help, to make that exhibition work for your space, we can help support that as well. So I am very excited to introduce Michelle Yun Mapplethorpe. She's the executive director at the Katonah Museum of Art. I also had the privilege of being in the Getty Leadership Institute back when there was one with her. She brings deep curatorial vision to exhibitions that push the boundaries of contemporary art. And today she's going to spotlight Ali Banisadr. I'm going to butcher this, Michelle.
Okay.
Ali Banisadr, The Alchemist, a powerful traveling exhibition that spans nearly 20 years of his work across painting, drawing, and printmaking. So, Michelle, tell us how partners can bring this to, well, first, tell us about the exhibition, and then how partners can bring this exhibition to their spaces.
Great. Well, thank you, Anne. I'm really grateful and honored to be part of this webinar, and I thank you and your team both for this opportunity today, but even more so for partnering with the Katonah Museum of Art to allow our exhibition, Ali Banisadr, The Alchemist, to travel across the United States. As many who are on the webinar know, it's becoming more and more challenging and cost prohibitive to travel exhibitions, especially with the shared shipping and insurance expenses, and especially for a smaller institution like the Katonah Museum of Art, it really becomes prohibitive. And so the opportunity to partner with Art Bridges and to have this special privilege of working with this organization to travel the exhibition is really such a game changer and makes it possible, not just for the organizing institution, but also for the touring venues as well. When we put this exhibition together initially, it was with the intention of touring it. We tried to do it ourselves. Just the expense of, what the administrative fee and the shared costs were just wasn't feasible for us. And for the institutions that we were in conversation with. So it really is such a lifesaver to have this opportunity. So I'm going to share my screen and share some details about the exhibition. As Anne mentioned, it is the first museum survey of Ali Banisadr's work. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he is a Persian American artist based in Brooklyn. He was born in Tehran in 1976 during the cultural right before the Islamic Revolution, and then came to the United States via Turkey at the age of 13, following his experience of living through the Iran-Iraq War. So this exhibition really encompasses over, just nearly 20 years of the artist's practice. We have international loans from both private and public collections across the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. So we really provide a comprehensive survey of the artist's career to date. What I think makes Ali so special as well is just his very unique vision about the world around us and how he synthesizes that through his paintings. And as we continue through my presentation, you'll really see the multifaceted and multidisciplinary perspective that he takes. Oops, sorry. So just kind of, again, giving you a little bit of background, he was, upon his arrival to the United States at the age of 12, he first settled in San Diego and then moved to San Francisco as a young adult, where he was part of the graffiti movement there. And then he also studied psychology. Both his mother was a psychologist. His grandmother was a Sufi poet, which I will get into a little bit later. And then came to New York City, where he first earned a BFA at the School of Visual Arts in 2005, and then his MFA in 2007. And, he has been very well represented in museum collections, but really hasn't had this critical reception to his work. So we're really so proud to be the first to showcase his work in this way. So as you can see from these two details of the artist studio, he has quite a breadth of influences from Cezanne, from Cezanne to Renaissance painting, to Picasso, to Goya, to, alchemy, psychology, poetry. And so this all gets synthesized into his practice. I'm going to run through some installation views of the exhibition as it was presented at the Katonah Museum of Art. For those of you who are not familiar with our institution, we are a Kunsthalle based in Katonah, New York, which is in Westchester, just an hour north of New York City. And we were founded in 1954 by an intrepid group of women who really wanted to bring the best of the art world to their community, and we continue to strive to do that to the present. We have 3 major exhibitions a year, and one being an exhibition that is originated from the museum, traveling exhibition, and then a guest curated exhibition. So you can see here from the introduction, we do kind of foreground the exhibition by showing some of the literary and visual influences of the artist from, literature, modernist literature, Sufi poetry, Again, Near Eastern to contemporary art, visual art, and music. The artist does have synesthesia, which is a condition where he synthesizes sound into colors, and so that very much influences his practice. And in fact, as a nice little Easter egg, the artist curated a soundtrack that visitors can listen to if they'd like on their cell phones as they traverse the exhibition. So the way that we organized this exhibition was chronologically, looking at his earliest period. Here you can see his first major painting from 2007, The Center Cannot Hold. And as you see from these earlier works, they're still very representative, very much influenced by Hieronymus Bosch, by Dürer, by medieval and Renaissance painting, really kind of thinking about this bucolic landscape and this microcosm. These earlier paintings are definitely having a bird's eye or a god's eye view, and he creates these, he's crafting these worlds and these microcosms of how he sees our society. And so then here you can see on the left is a page from his sketchbook, and he's really kind of outlining in this kind of dichotomous key all of the influences and kind of how he sees the hierarchy and kind of the genealogy of art history. And so, that's so important in the understanding and reading of his work. And then here's just kind of a wall in the first gallery looking from his earliest work to some contemporary works from this century to kind of give a range and a cross-section of how his practice has evolved. You can see here in the first large gallery, oops, sorry, my mouse is a little sensitive. This kind of mid-period, these are works starting from 2015. The painting on the right is in the Hirschhorn's collection. The one on the left is from Buffalo AKG. And so as you see the artist progressing in time, his scale is growing. The works are becoming much more frontal, more theatrical in terms of the compositional structure. They're very colorful and dynamic, and so there's a lot of, conflict or kind of feeling like there is this idea of battle. What you see in the foreground is a new sculpture called Alchemy. Sorry. And, we were very proud to support the new direction of sculpture for the artist. So there are a number of new sculptures that have been created specifically for this presentation and shown to the public for the first time. Here's another view of that gallery. Printmaking and works on paper are an integral part of the artist's practice. So you see on the left some etchings. They're in some cases 27 plates. And if you see them up close, if you see the checklist on the Art Bridges website, they are very masterful in the way that technically they feel very painterly, even though with the etching process, it is quite a precise technique. Here's just another view of the gallery where you can really see the scale and the breadth of his work from this period. When you look at the paintings at first glance, they seem very abstract, but there is a lot of symbology and narrative direction in the paintings. And so they really do invite multiple looking and really can have an interdisciplinary analysis. So here is the second large gallery. It's coming to the more recent works. The work on the right is from 2023 and is the largest painting to date. It's called These Fragments I Have Shored Against My Runes. And so with like many of his more recent works, you see that the scale and the feel, it really envelopes your field of vision. You become part of the landscape and the environment. In this particular work, he's thinking about both current events, alchemy, mythology, psychology, the artist has said with this particular painting, he was thinking about different types of conflict. You know, many of his earlier works were thinking about real, you know, real battles or kind of issues within society and between societies. But in this, he's thinking about the threat of technology on society. So you have this kind of like time tunnel here on the top middle to right third of the canvas in terms of thinking about his relationship to art history. Picasso and particularly Guernica is an important touchstone for the artist. And so the dimensions of this painting echo that of Guernica. And so again, thinking about the iconography of Guernica being this lament on warfare. This is kind of a lament on the technological assault on society. And the artist has 2 young daughters, and so that was very much on his mind. Then, sorry, here's just kind of a little focus on the new sculptures, just thinking about the artist process and showing the detail around that. Here's just a view of the scale. There's a lot of really large scale works that really invite, again, this contemplation for audiences and really do have such detail and nuance and depth to them in terms of all the ideas that the artist is bringing to the fore. And here's a couple of other installation views. Here on the far wall to the left are some works on paper, thinking about some of the avatars that the artist is using in his work. You know, Carl Jung is a big influence, and Jung, as you may know, was really one of the primary influences on a revival of the interest in alchemy. And so thinking about these avatars or these archetypes that the artist incorporates into his paintings and in his sculptures adds another dimension to the reading. And then just kind of, again, thinking about the art historical references. I'm just showing an example here. Here's a recent painting from 2022 called Queen of the Night, where the artist was thinking both about current events during that time. In Iran, there was the women's liberation movement. So he was thinking about female empowerment, especially as that relates to Iranian society at that time, but then also thinking very deep into antiquities. You know, a lot of Mesopotamian sculpture and other antiquities are very much a touchstone for the artist. So he was referencing this 4th century BCE relief, a Mesopotamian relief in the British Museum's collection called Queen of the Night, hence the title. And so it's incorporated here in the painting with all these alchemical symbols, these, you know, hybrid avatars. Surrealism was also a great influence on the artist, but they're just really rich and dynamic compositions. And I think in terms of programming around it, this is an example. We have a learning center that is open daily for children. It's one of the only drop-in art centers for kids. So we partnered with the artist to create, since sculpture was a new direction for him, it was something he was excited about. So we created this sculpture installation wall where the kids were invited, or anybody for that matter, adults were welcome to participate as well. The materials were out and people could create sculptures that were based on the ideas and the influences and the avatars in Ali's work if they choose, and then could install them on the wall, and it became an additive interactive installation. We also had a painting station for kids where they could use different tools and materials that were akin to Ali's practice. And then on the very bottom left, you know, we're including some of the influences that he himself used in his studio as as a reference for them to engage with. In addition to the exhibition proper, we have an exhibition catalog that can accompany the tour. It includes 3 critical essays, an overall essay by myself, a essay focusing on the influence of surrealism on Ali's practice by Dr. Grazina Septier, who is an associate curator at the Peggy Guggenheim Collection. Bill Sherman, who is the director of the Warburg Institute, also contributed an essay. We have a conversation transcribed with Robert Storr, the noted art historian, a fully annotated plate section, and then a section of back matter that includes excerpts from the artist's notebooks that can really give another read and resonance to his practice. The catalog is being internationally distributed by Yale University Press, and you can either purchase the catalog through us or through them. And then this is just kind of an example of some of the public programs that we incorporated as part of the exhibition. As I mentioned, there are so many different directions that you can take in terms of diving into Ali's work. We had Sarah Graff, who is a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Near Eastern Art Department, and Alexander Nagel, who's a professor of Renaissance art from NYU. There was a session on tarot card making. We had family day activities that melded art and science. We also have bilingual and neurodivergent audience materials that we can provide, as well as docent and teacher training packets. And as I mentioned, the soundtrack that Ali made for us would be available as well. We had some really great press that Art Bridges can share with you if you'd like to read some critical responses to the exhibition. And then just lastly, sharing the tour dates. We have availability in February to July of 2028, and then August 2028 to January 2029. And Chris Guerrera, who's the traveling exhibitions coordinator at Art Bridges, would be glad to speak to you further about the tour and how Art Bridges can support your presentation at your museum. So again, I just want to share how what a game changer it has been, and a wonderful opportunity for not only the KMA, but also this very worthy artist to be able to tour this exhibition and to have the opportunity to partner with Art Bridges. So thank you again, Anne, and to your team.
You're so welcome, Michelle. First of all, what an incredible exhibition and how it expands, the American art historical narrative, but all the connections to art history in general. It's just so rich. So there's 2 slots available. Folks that are interested, we will certainly put the links to the criticism, as well as Chris's contact information for those that are interested. Sorry, it's getting a little noisy in here. So I am going to turn it over to Ashley. Oh, one more thing I should say. Our traveling exhibitions also come with community support. So for traveling exhibitions, we can fund, anywhere between 15 and 25,000, depending on what the community engagement projects are. Okay, I have a very loud grandma behind me. So Ashley, I'm going to turn it over to you because you are curator and director of curatorial initiatives, and we have this incredible new collection that we are getting ready to share with museums across the country. So I will pass it over.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I am just waiting for my slides to come up, but you may have seen the announcement that Art Bridges has acquired 81 works of contemporary Indigenous art for our collection. This is pretty astronomical, not just in the amount of the works, but also in the importance of these works being a part of an American art collection. They were acquired from the John and Susan Horseman collection. John and Susan are collectors based in St. Louis. We originally became acquainted with them when they lent pretty extensively to an exhibition, Action Abstraction, that was organized by the Institute of American Indian Arts, MOCNA, the Museum of Contemporary Native Art, that was toured by Art Bridges for the St. Louis Art Museum presentation. They supplemented the original show with works from John and Susan's collection. And since then, we have been in conversation with them about ways that we could bring those works into the collection to really provide an ability to lend across the country at an even larger scale than what John and Susan were doing. They were lending the collection. Now we are lending the collection, and we're really excited about it. And as we go through the works, there are definitely opportunities here for various ways to activate them within your space. And I'm just going to caveat it with, if you see something you're excited about, please reach out. Some works are already out and on view. Some may have a little bit of a hold on them. We will work with your schedule and find an opportunity for you to present these works for your audiences. So with that, I'm going to be talking about, I think it is 10 works total from the collection. And what's really fun is the reason I picked these works is because next week we are going to be, my team, the curatorial team, are going to be headed to our storage facility to work with our friends at Smart History to create Smart History videos for these specific works. So beyond this presentation, there's going to be an opportunity to learn even more. And if you aren't familiar with the Art Bridges collection and the way that we provide not just work to audiences, but also scholarship and research, a lot of work is going into ensuring that we really have a deep understanding of each of these pieces and are able to share beyond just the work itself, but information about the artists, about their lives, about their influences. And so this is a great opportunity to just learn more. And with that, let's go to the first artist. So Rita Latondra, this is an artist that you may not be familiar with. She is a Canadian First Nations artist. Rita was Abenaki. She was an abstract painter. She unfortunately passed away in 2021, but is really an incredible artist that at the time of the creation of this work, she was a part of these different groups of artists, and excuse my French, but the les automatistes and les plasticiens, which were thinking about the practice of sort of intuitive painting. And then they always say, the les plasticiens were a little bit more orderly. So they were thinking about like color field and geometry. And so this is a great example of Rita Latondra's practice, which was done in 1963. And the title is actually in reference to an Israeli settlement in the outskirts of Tel Aviv and translates to Garden Height. And the work, the more time you spend with it, these colors start to emerge. You really see the gestural aspects of it, but also the geometric aspects. And it's emblematic of Latondra's visual vocabulary during the early 1960s, where she's foregrounding dynamic color palettes, as well as highly expressive brushstrokes. I love this image because you can see that little frame that's around it. I'm a sucker for a good frame. It's such a beautiful painting. Next slide, please. George Morrison. If you're in New York City, make sure you hit up the George Morrison show at the Met. This is such a fun addition for us because we now, with this work, with some other works, have 2 wood collages by Morrison, as well as 3 early abstract paintings in the Art Bridges collection. So even though we always say we are trying to collect broadly and not deeply, there are moments that it makes sense for us to really bring in incredible works by artists in multiples. And I think Morrison is a great example of that. Morrison was born in what is now known as Minnesota on Lake Superior. He relocated to New York City in the 1950s, which is when he was creating this work. He was working and exhibiting alongside artists like de Kooning and Pollock. And he's really just a part of this conversation that Native art has always been a part of American art and a part of the American art canon. It's just not always been visible to everybody. So Morrison, beautiful painting, really, really lovely. Next slide. Okay, I want to make sure I say his name right. Alex Janvier, not the Janvier that I want to say, is from the Cold Lake First Nation and was born in 1935 and passed away recently in 2024. Janvier, like a lot of these artists, was influenced by European modernists, especially Paul Klee and Vasily Kandinsky. And it's always important to say, you know, these artists, when we're talking about them being influenced by European artists and other European American artists, I'm not using that as a qualifier that they are, because of those influences, they're sort of worth being talked about within American art. It's instead to call out that they are active participants within these larger fields and movements and art creation. And so if we're not talking about all of the artists participating, we're sort of missing an important aspect. Janvier is a First Nation artist from Canada, like Rita Latondra. This is really talking to the idea that for us at Art Bridges, American art is not determined by a national sort of border scope, but is instead about this concept of American experience and recognizing Indigenous peoples, you know, really are pre-borders, and the borders are created entities. And so we want to acknowledge that. Janvier was a co-founder of Canada's first Indigenous art collective, the Professional Native Indian Artists Incorporated, which is also known informally as the Indigenous Group of Seven or the Indian Group of Seven. He was inspired by dreams and cartography and hunting, and you can really start to see that in these flowing lines, and also the influence of Bauhaus techniques, which are thinking about positive and negative space, compositional balance, cool and hot colors. And all of this is playing in this work, which the scale of it, it's always hard to recognize scale in a PowerPoint, but it is a really lovely large scale painting. Next slide. R.C. Gorman, Rudolph Karl Gorman. This is an artist that this may be a style of his work that you aren't familiar with. He's really well known for his very romantic depictions of Native women. This is more of his abstracted work, which I am so excited about. Gorman was born in 1931 in Chinle, Arizona, on the Navajo Reservation. After high school, he served in the Navy before attending Northern Arizona University, which I think I saw somebody from Northern Arizona University on the chat. He spent time in Mexico City on scholarship and then moved to San Francisco in the 1950s, where he was very active in the art and activism that was going on during that time. And then at the end of the 1960s, moved to New Mexico and started a gallery, which I believe was the first Native-owned gallery in the country. R.C. Gorman, you know, really known for these depictions of women, but he also would work in abstraction. He was pulling motifs from material culture, thinking about weaving and pottery, and just a wonderful, I think, depiction by an artist that would be a really interesting comparison with color field artists and color theory. Next slide. Here we have a twofer, Fritz Scholder and Lloyd Keavenue, both important figures of contemporary Native art, integral to the creation and success of the Institute of American Indian Art. The work on the left is slowly becoming one of my favorite pieces in the collection. And I think part of it is because this is a work that if you are just looking at it and you're not looking at the title, you know, you're not really aware of what you're seeing. It feels very kinetic energy, vibrant colors, abstracted. But once you realize what it is, you are looking at a depiction of an eye dazzler blanket that is still on the loom. Really tiny around that border is a red, the red wool that is holding it onto that loom. And so it's this great moment of sort of realizing that this is a work that is both figurative as well as abstracted. You know, he's thinking about Native artistic practices, but he's also thinking about Wayne Thiebaud and the use of mass culture and trompe-l'oeils and all of these sort of art historical moments that are such a fun comparison to think about. And then you can always present it and talk about the history of weaving. There's just so many through lines. And then Lloyd Keevaneu, Cherokee fashion designer, little partial always to the Cherokee artists in the collection. New was instrumental in training a generation of Native artists who were given the ability to push against ideas of authenticity and to create works that spoke to the reality of being an Indigenous person at that time. He was very much a fashion designer, but you get to see these really wonderful moments in his paintings that oftentimes you do not see. So I am really excited about this work being in the collection now. Next slide. Here we have Billy War Soldier Souza, who was a Cahuilla Apache artist that was born in 1949 in what is now known as California. He attended IAIA, where he was hanging out with all the cool people like T.C. Cannon, Alfred Youngman, Earl Biss, Linda Loma Heftawa. He received his name, Billy War Soldier, when he was a part of the Red Power movement in the 1970s. And a lot of his work is overtly, expressly political, often using motifs and colors associated with the United States. We're seeing a lot of people really leaning into the idea of Indigenous art as we are coming up on the semi-quincentennial of the United States. And I think that's a really smart way to address some of these larger conversations that are going to be happening during that moment of reflection. Next slide. Another great dual presentation here, Rose V. Simpson, Nora Naranjo Morse. These are both Santa Clara Pueblo women artists. Rose is an artist that we've had in the collection with another work, Karen, which is one of her bronze pieces. And then we have this smaller bust, and then there is also a larger sculpture that is a part of the collection now. So really showing the breadth of Simpson's production. And then Nora Naranjo Morse, I'm just so excited for this piece. This is a little deceptive. It is a fairly tall piece, 72 inches by 10 inches, 3 individual sculptures. And what is really fun is something else that we do at Art Bridges is we are slowly creating a living artist video series. And I know that Nora is one of the artists that we are hoping to bring to that video series, which more in months to come. But there are all of these just great opportunities with Art Bridges for variations on interpretation and being able to bring these artists into your space and present all information to your audiences about them. Next slide. Lawrence Paul Yaxwell-Upton. This is an incredible piece from 1985, Leaving My Reservation to Go to Ottawa and Fight for a New Constitution. Lawrence Paul Yaxwell-Upton, Yaxwell-Upton meaning man of many masts, is an artist who is very much, thinking about Northwest Coast imagery. His use of the ovoid is iconic. And he is also interrogating surrealism, and his use of it is about this narrative that the surrealists were using when they were appropriating Indigenous representation in visual culture, because they saw it as primitive and sort of unadulterated by the larger contemporary world. And Yaxwell-Upton is really interesting in reclaiming that narrative and reclaiming it for Indigenous visual culture and sort of countering it through his work. This is a very political piece that is talking about this representative headed off to Ottawa, that they are negotiating a new constitution for their tribal nation and everything that that entails. And then last but not least, we have Jeffrey Gibson. And something I always like to call out is that Jeffrey Gibson has been a part of the Art Bridges collection for as long as I've been with the organization, which is now 7 years. He is an artist that I think really has defined this transition from Native art being seen as separate from American art, not standing in both worlds. And if you know Native art, there's that idea of the standing in both worlds, but instead this bridging between the different art creations. And so Jeff, with his punching bags, this one specifically is referencing a song written by Rodgers and Hart for the musical Pal Joey, which was performed by Ella, called Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. And not only is he creating a visual conversation with the work itself, but also in the way he is displaying the lyrics, adding spaces that change the meaning of this bewitched to bewitched, and bewildered to bewildered. And he's pulling from op art, queer rave clubs, pattern and decoration movement, Afrofuturist aesthetics, and eye dazzler aesthetics. And for him, the punching bags are about a struggle of power. And really, it's a celebrating adornment and ornaments, pulling both from queer histories and queer culture, thinking about the relationship of queerness and camp, as well as Native regalia and sort of decadent beadwork and all of these wonderful things going on. And so last slide. Yes, all of these are now a part of the Art Bridges collection. All 81 works are available to partners across the country, dependent on availability and all of that fun logistical stuff that happens with an actively lending art collection. If you've never borrowed from Art Bridges, I always just like to call out all of the reasons that you should be borrowing from Art Bridges. And it's because it's really about a relationship between your organization, Art Bridges Foundation, and the Art Bridges collection. We work alongside you to help identify the works that are going to help you have the most impact for your community, as well as what is really going to enhance your exhibition, your permanent galleries, your special galleries. We love it when you get creative with the ways to use our works. We cover all direct costs, so that includes two-way shipping, all the creating, conservation, if couriers are needed, or art handlers, or even additional security, we will help fund that. And we're really just here to help you be successful, both in requesting a loan, presenting it to your audience, as well as the activation through learning engagement funding, which is almost always available to partners to help bring those works to life for your audiences, to help bring in new audiences. And just a little bit of a shout out to the future. We are getting ready to transition our loan process to an online portal. And so if you've borrowed from us in the past, here in the next couple of months, we will be talking you through what it looks like now to put in an application. And what it's going to help you do is really think about the impact these works are having for your community and help measure that impact, which we're really excited about, because we know that these works are doing great things, and we just want to be able to show that with different data and all of the wonderful things that come with borrowing and receiving funding from Art Bridges. So thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions after Anne.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So we have 2 minutes. There's one question for Lauren about community engagement. So Lauren, talk about community engagement with the Partner Loan Network in 60 seconds or less, and then perhaps we can connect you with Adam, who asked that question.
Sure. In the past, we have used learning engagement grant funds for an extensive digital hands-on activity in the gallery to engage a loaned work. And we are, with the Toledo loan, we are finalizing learning and engagement for, I guess we're helping to fund a Spanish-speaking fellow who will be doing Spanish language only tours, translations, and helping us with advancing our bilingual offerings at the museum, as well as a pretty extensive program with some of the middle schools in our county, Title I middle schools, to go to their school and meet with them and engage with them about some of the artwork, and then fund a trip to bring them to the museum, do tours and programs, hands-on activities. And then we're also taking them to a second museum in Atlanta to see other works from some of the collections that we're working with. So it's a sort of multi-part process that we would not have otherwise been able to fund. So it's lots of different projects are currently being funded, sort of all under this umbrella of learning and engagement.
Amazing. So yeah, you can see everything from like tech to community partnerships. So I want to thank you all for joining us. We will be sending some follow-up materials, some links, and I encourage you all to connect with each other. You introduced yourselves, and so if you have questions for our panelists, don't hesitate to reach out. And we will share, the slides and recording of this webinar with you as well. And have a great rest of your, what day is it? Thursday. All right.